Hello, and welcome to the Devils in God's Country. I am one of your hosts, Casper Rigsby. My lovely co host, Allie Jackson, could not be here tonight due to an illness. We're all wishing for a speedy recovery for her and that she feels better and is able to join us again very, very soon. Miss you a lot, Miss Allie. Hope you get better real soon. Um, Hopefully, I will have Rob Moore of Mythicist Milwaukee joining me again tonight here in a bit. I got started a little late, so I think he may be running a little late as well. Um, the topic for tonight is revisionist history as it relates to religion, especially here in the U.S., as it especially relates to Christianity. Um, if Rob isn't able to make it with us tonight, then I'll just kind of rant a little bit for myself. We may cut it a little short if Rob's not able to show up, because it's just kind of silly to sit here in my own little echo chamber and fucking rant and rave. I know nobody really will enjoy that all that much. So the reason this topic came to mind was that my son recently had a choir concert with his school choir, and this concert took place at a local Baptist church. And as we were waiting on them to perform, they have some little projector screens up in front in the little auditorium section, and they were projecting images up onto there and asking questions, basically for the audience to answer to themselves, pertaining to history in relation to Christmas, most especially. Um, so some of the questions involved when Christmas first started, whether or not Christian or Christmas is based on a earlier pagan holiday, and um, things of this nature, where the Christmas tree comes from, and the poinsettia, and all this other stuff. And of course, it had a very Christian bent to it, pro-Christian. But it, funny enough, they did actually acknowledge that Christmas itself does come from an earlier pagan religion, or earlier pagan traditions, which is, it made me think of the point that there comes a point when knowledge becomes so available and so readily available to people that it's almost impossible to dismiss. Um, and then once we reach that point, we sometimes see a sort of 180 circle where people try to judge the facts of history or science, in a light of saying, well, we can question this for sure, um, because the Bible says this, or because it doesn't agree with our personal viewpoints and whatnot. So it's kind of interesting to see that sort of circular happening where things can become so well known and prevalent that it's almost accepted by everyone, and then we see like sort of a rise in fundamentalism or traditionalism that shifts it on its axis and turns it the other way. And then we see people who are like, well, evolution is just a theory. And it's one of those things where it's like Dawkins has recently said, and others have said it besides Dawkins, but evolution is both theory and fact. We know that evolution is real because it has been shown to be real. The the real distinction is, how does it happen, and that's the theory of evolution. And there's still some questions to be answered in that arena. So there's definitely questions to be answered as to how it happens. But the question of does it happen or not isn't a real question. And it's funny when we see people like Ken Ham and Ray Comfort and others try to push the idea that, oh, it's just a theory and we don't know that this happens at all and it contradicts with the Bible, so we can question it and we can say, no, that's just bullshit. And it's one of those things where, no, your misunderstanding of the word theory in and of itself when it pertains to science has brought you to the perspective that you can judge and question something that is actually an established fact as if it were conjecture, and it's not. It's not on the same level. And this is where education and understanding comes into play. There are many things in history that we can say are historical facts. Like, we have so much overwhelming evidence and proof of these things that we can say historically this is true. And then there are things that we have so much evidence and facts against that we can say historically this is not true. And we have all this huge mountain of evidence to say this is not factually true. This is definitely something that needs to be questioned, that can be questioned, and that we all should be questioning. Why would this be accepted as truth if we don't have the facts and evidence to back it up? Sorry about that, guys. For those of you watching, not very many tonight. I know. I'm so sorry. It's it's probably a bit boring when it's just me. So it becomes a real issue when we try to deal with revisionist history, and it's something that we've been dealing with here in the United States as of late, to a greater extent than we've really dealt with it in the past. It's kind of crazy. Many states have had school books that have proposed very, excuse me, very historically unfactual ideas to be something that should be taught as historical truths. I know it was recently proposed. I'm not sure if it was in Texas or one of the other southern states down here, but it was proposed to implant the idea that Moses was the founder of the United States, or that our Constitution and our entire general way of life in the United States was based on some sort of biblical teachings and teachings of Moses, which is absolutely incongruent with factual history. But the funny thing about history is that until you start dealing with forensic history and forensic science and the forensic sciences of archaeology and historical fact checking, ideas that are presented and they're judged against other ideas that are presented, and we see which ones have the greatest credence and the greatest amount of evidence to show them to be true. Before that came about, there was this general prevalence that the victor wrote the history books. The history was written by the person that wins, or the group that wins, or the people that win. And those are the people who write the history, and that's the history that we're given. And luckily, especially for people like myself who actually want to know the factual truth rather than be given a million different ideas and say, well, this one comes from the Bible or the Quran or anything else, and so obviously that's true because God told these people about this and God had his hand in it, so it has to be true. And that's craziness. It's very circular. It's a very circular idea to say that God made all these things happen, and therefore God also gave these other people knowledge of these things, and so we have to accept them as truth. Especially when we look at books such as the Bible, which they're not firsthand accounts. Secondly, we have to deal with the idea that the firsthand account is almost always the least authoritative and least acceptable account. And that's an odd thing to think of. You think, oh, well, this guy actually saw what happened, so we got to take his word for it. He saw what happened. But let's just look at the legal system. You know, how reliable is an eyewitness account? And when we look at that, we see that eyewitness accounts are not all that reliable. People are in general are not all that reliable in our memory, especially when it comes to things that are very impacting in our life. If they have a big impact, we tend to quite often be very unreliable in actually presenting the facts of the matter. Um, and there's a lot of reasons for that. One of them is that human beings tend to embellish to some decent degree. Um, we like to inflate things um, and make them seem a little bit bigger than life, um, and that can cause some issues um, when we're trying to figure out what's factually true and what isn't factually true, and that's just part of human nature. You know, we tend to blow things up a little bigger than they are, or if they don't match up with our ideas, sometimes we tend to sell them a bit short, and say, oh, well, that's not really as good as it could be. So, we're just going to kind of overlook it and gloss over it. So, to get back to the choir performance that my son performed in, and what was going on there with sort of revisionist history that was being presented to these people. Um, One of the things that was mentioned there was where does the practice of using Christmas trees come from? And their answer was that it comes from Germany. Now, this isn't exactly true. In fact, the practice of bringing trees into people's homes and decorating them predates the Germanic people by a good bit. And it goes back to earlier pagan traditions. And it's a lot like with Easter. So we look at answers like that, and we have to ask, well, why would they admit that Christmas itself is taken from a pagan religion, and yet, um, sorry, Rob's trying to join me. Okay, um, and yet, um, the Christmas tree, they don't want to actually acknowledge where the Christmas tree comes from, to go back and accept that bit of history. So it's it's a bit weird to see that, to experience that. Like, why can you accept one part of this but not another? And that, I think that boils down to the amount of knowledge that's available to people, and what's so widely accepted that it can almost not be ignored. Um, so we're seeing a weird rise in that lately. It's just it's definitely strange for me myself. That's for sure. But when we dive into these ideas and what's going on there, what we really have to ask ourselves is, what are you concerned with? Are you concerned with the idea that comforts you, or are you concerned with uh, the idea that's actually factually true? And I think that's really what we have to actually ask ourselves. It's it's definitely something that we need to look at, um, and we need to ask ourselves what we personally are concerned with. Sorry, guys. So, in dealing with this topic, um, it brings us back to the idea of discussing mythicism, especially for me personally. It has us circling back around to asking questions like, did Jesus actually exist? Um, and that's definitely a question that we all kind of should be asking. Unfortunately, most of us are not asking that question. And you have to wonder why. Like, why aren't we asking that question? And it seems to be because most people actually believe that Jesus existed, and they just accept that as a factual truth, regardless of whether there is or is not any actual basis for that belief that can be factually substantiated. And when we deal with that, I'm sorry, I'm trying to help Rob get into the hangout here. He's having a little trouble. He seems to be getting the viewing link rather than the joining link. Urgh, frustrating. Oh, I'm so far off here. Okay. So what I would like to ask is how many people out there in the audience um, actually accept that Jesus was a real person? Um, and I think if we really look at it, we're going to see that most people do, regardless of whether they're atheists or um, whether they're religious or not, or anything. And the question is why? Like why do they believe that as a factual truth? Um, and is there hard evidence to show that it's factually true? And when we look deep into the idea, we come to find that there's not a lot of good, substantial, hard evidence. Now, I know one of the biggest fallacies that is put forth by people who do believe in a historical Jesus is to say that, well, the vast majority, almost the entirety of scholars believe in a historical Jesus. So why would anybody question that? And of course, this is a fallacy simply because um, simply because I'm sorry, I'm still trying to deal with this. This is a fallacy simply because this is an appeal to authority. Um, and when you appeal to authority, of course, you're making a fallacy because you're assuming that the supposed authority knows better than you. And so you can just agree with whatever they put forward. And that's not always the case. In fact, that's almost never a good path to take, because just because someone has a degree in something or they can call themselves an authority in it, if someone can say, I'm a theologian, so you just have to take my word for it, that doesn't mean that they don't have any motivations or anything like that. There's Rob. Thank you so much. I'm dying here by myself, just talking to myself like a fool. Rob, can you hear me,
I made
brother?
it, man.
Awesome.
I was waiting for my phone. I'm looking at my phone and I can't open Google Hangouts on my phone. I can't. The link doesn't go anywhere. So I had to get up.
Yeah.
I had to get on my laptop, set it up.
Oh,
Sorry about that, man. I thought it was at 9 o'clock too,
no.
man.
Oh no, I'm so sorry. That's my fault.
All
I didn't get here and going quick enough.
right.
So
Bear with
I
you.
don't know if you Yeah, I don't know if you got to see where I posted what the topic would be, but I'm talking about revisionist history, and I think
All right.
that's something we can definitely relate to your field of work with Mythicist Milwaukee and what you guys do, because we deal with a lot of revisionist history a lot, especially in the atheist community and especially within mythicism. Like there's this sort of bent and lean towards a revisionist viewpoint of historical facts. And I tried to relate that around to how it deals with how we deal with a historical Jesus. You know, we accept a viewpoint because it's supposedly given to us by authorities in the field, you know, theologians and scholars and whatnot. And we say, well, you know, if the majority of theologians and scholars agree with this, then it must be true. Of course, you and I both know that that is an appeal to authority fallacy. So, you know, how do we deal with that? You know, how do we deal with people that say, well, you know, the authority says it is, so that's what we have to go
I don't know. It's funny you bring that up because I had to deal with it growing up. My mom was a complete uh, victim, if you will, of that fallacy. Where if it was the preacher who said so, or if the pastor came by and said you need to do this, that was it, man. You didn't, well, Pastor Rob came and said to do this, so that's what we're doing now. Wasn't any question in it. She kind of always deferred to that kind of authority. The president, whoever it was. So I think, there's a psychology to most people in our society that lends itself to that kind of, and it's comforting. Well, somebody else make that decision, and I trust that they're knowledgeable and they have my best interest at heart. And of course, you and I both know that they never do. But I'm not sure that there's anything to really be done about what's kind of a natural psychological phenomenon with most people.
with. So one of the things, and especially that in the mythicist camps, that those of us like you and myself, like and Sean and the other guys that work with you guys at Mythicist Milwaukee, what we try to do is not specifically tell people what the truth is or what the you know exactly what to believe or what to think, but we ask people to be skeptical, ask questions. You know, don't accept the authorities on the matter just because they have a degree or some other bullshit. You know, it's one of those things where I love what David Fitzgerald is doing, especially with his next book. And showing people that there is an agenda behind a lot of this that people don't really see. It's one of those weird things where you go, oh, well, you know, that's some conspiracy theory stuff. And honestly, you know, it's only a conspiracy if you can't show that it's factually true. And I love what David's trying to do with this next book, which is to show that amongst religious scholars, it's factually true that these people are motivated and driven to present an already supposedly established idea and to keep that as the norm, you know, and it's any voice of dissent is pretty much shot down.
Well, that's pretty clearly true throughout history, and the other thing is that uh, the, the people want that, they crave that, and when when we put actual learning out there, and we put actual education out there, there's only a certain segment of people that are going to open their minds to it anyway. So we're after the fence sitters, I guess. Is the best we can do is find those few people who are just getting to that point where they can't take that cognitive dissonance ringing in their head anymore, and they just have to they have to embrace the knowledge that we're putting out there. And the fact is that all these people who these 90% and 99% of historians that you hear about that the apologists go to have all been subjectively steeped in the same religious tea kettle as all of us. They want to draw that conclusion. They want to come by it honestly. I don't think a lot of them are deceptive in or are deceiving in nature. I think a lot of them really believe. They just don't. They can't see. They don't have any objectivity at all because they're in it. They're still in the myth, so they want to come to the conclusion. So part of what I'll be talking about at MythCon 3 when I do my talk is how mythicism fits in and how we can use it to to kind of pry people off of the fence a little bit. But it's all about education, like you said. Can't get people to open their minds and look at it, there's not much you can do. But we try to put it out there finally in an objective light. Here's this: we're not Christians, we're not tied to any Abrahamic faith or any political imperative. We just want people to look at the research finally and describe to us, and we're going to find out in these debates where does anybody get off even postulating a historical Jesus when there's just no evidence at all.
Yeah, and I think that's wonderful that you guys are going to have airmen in one of your debates because you know, Airman's last book actually poses one of the better arguments for mythicism than it does for a historical Jesus. I know a lot of us were going, okay, if there's a historical Jesus, this is the guy that's going to give us the flat out facts and evidence to show that to be factually true, and that's going to end the discussion. And he put out this last book, and a lot of us that have read through it, we said, well, fuck, man, you didn't give us anything. Like, where's the evidence? Where's the nail in the coffin here that we were all looking for? And if we're wrong, we're the type of people to say, I want to be shown that I'm wrong. And once you do that, then the discussion is over. Like, you win, you got it, you're right. So it's going to be great to see airmen put to a debate and have to actually substantiate what he says, because his claims all rely pretty much on the Gospels, and when it comes right down to it, how reliable are the Gospels? And you and I know that no, they're not reliable, and he's going to have to try and back that up. So it's definitely going to be interesting. I especially look forward to that debate.
Yeah, I do too. And uh, the problem is that all of these people are trying to draw conclusions, and I include the mythicists in this camp, and that's why there's such dissent among the mythicists. I think is that none of this will ever be proven, and we pretty much have to accept that. But the information that is being put, or the conclusions that are being drawn, are extrapolations of information that can be interpreted in different ways. If this was cut and dried, if it was math, if they had found an ancient tablet of equations and something scientific like that was cut and dried, you couldn't be argued about it. But you've got all these differing opinions on what did this passage mean, what did Paul really mean when he said this, and you can interpret those things a few different ways, and I see we see that happening down the line through the new mythicists right now. But the problem is that a guy like Ehrman can go there too and just say, well, this, and he's drawing on the Gospels, as you quite correctly say, even though we know the Gospels weren't factual, weren't firsthand accounts, weren't even written that closely to Jesus's supposed lifetime. So, to be able to say that he did or he didn't exist is a matter of that kind of just drawing conclusions from information that's incomplete and that nobody will ever really agree on. So I think that's where it's the only thing I can get out of it. Where else is he coming from, and where else are any of these people coming from? Because I've been in this for 3-4 years now. I've yet to see anybody come up with anything solid. It's all just seems like the wishful thinking. We want there to have been a historical Jesus because it's comforting, even to some atheists somehow.
Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point when you talk about the sort of dissent and divide even in the mythicist camp, because you have people such as Joseph Atwill, who offers this idea of the Flavian conspiracy to create Jesus and stuff, and then people like you and I, we look at that and we go, oh my God, you're doing such a detriment to people who are actually working on mythicism from a more realistic perspective. Like you've pulled up the Da Vinci Code out of your sort of Flavian conspiracy, and now we're all going, "Oh my God! Now we look like fools. Come on,
Right.
man! Just oh." And I've looked at Atwell stuff too, and I feel like it's the same sort of thing that we get from religious people, because he's drawing these very broad um, conclusions from just some slight little bits of information. He's going, well, look how this correlates with this, and obviously it must be a manipulation amongst the Flavian Roman Empire, and it's like I'm not saying you're necessarily wrong completely, but I'm saying you've gone to a point where I can't just support you because I don't, that doesn't, you don't have any more evidence than fucking Airman does to support a historical Jesus. So,
Right.
so now
Right.
we're both sitting there looking like fools.
Yeah. We talked to Ken Humphreys on the show yesterday, man, and from England.
Mhm.
You know Ken Humphreys, the mythicist from England.
Yes.
He's fantastic to listen to, man. And he tore down in his last video. He tore down the trial of Jesus as seen through. I want to say 3 out of 4 of the Gospels, the trial and the differences in the trials, how they're depicted, and I mean, right there again, it's every little piece these guys tear apart makes it a further absurdity to even suspect that it might have been based on anybody real. It's just it's just so far fetched that like people are interested to see maybe Ehrman's got something that's going to surprise us all, but I get the feeling that that's why this debate hasn't happened because he knows he's going to get owned. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. I don't see him coming with anything of any real substance. I think he'll just try and um, defend his position as usual. And it's funny when we talk about Airman. Airman is not outside of the community. Airman's work is accepted by Christians, as well as many atheists, because his
Yeah.
viewpoint definitely coincides with the Christian viewpoint. So he gives them
Mhm.
some substantiation. Um, so it's very weird to feel that there's an atheist working on the side of Christianity, and it's like, what are you doing, man? Like, why aren't you
Well,
presenting everything?
you know,
You
you know
know?
what? It seems weird to folks out here who are more used to creationism and fundamentalism, but being from New England, it doesn't surprise me. It goes right along with the tradition I grew up with, where no one really took Jesus, as much of a. Everybody figured he was a real figure, but none of what he did was taken too literally at all. He spoke in parables. It was a topic of discussion that probably most of his life was mythicized or legendized or however you wanted to put it. That was not shocking talk for the kind of Protestant churches I grew up in, Congregationalist, Methodist, Northern Baptist, First Baptist, Wesleyan churches. As the 60s and 70s came along and evolution became an obvious fact before science became uncool to the right wing foolishness in this country. I'm old enough to remember a time when science was cool and Carl Sagan came around. We were learning stuff. Everybody knew that Genesis wasn't a literal depiction of events. Whether God existed or not, you could debate forever. But we know, we knew then, and we know today that that's not how it happened. If God exists, He made the world in a different way than is depicted in 4,000-year-old story written by post cave people.
For me personally, one of the things that really brought me into the mythicist camp was looking at Jesus supposedly entering into the temple and throwing out the money changers. And when I started looking into that event from a historical viewpoint, I came to understand some things. first and foremost among that is a lot of people don't get the idea that if now, and this is a big if because we have no proof whatsoever that the temple was ever used as a money changing and money exchange and marketplace. We have no proof of that whatsoever. But one of the big things that we have to look at is if it was used in that way, then we have to understand that the people operating there actually owed taxes to the Roman Empire. Therefore, there would be Roman guards on patrol there at all times. So if Jesus came up into the temple and started just throwing the money changers out and toppling their tables and whipping them with whips, as the Bible says, he would have been arrested on the spot.
Or
There
just
would
had
have
his
been
ass kicked.
no yeah, there would have been no waiting several weeks later, and then he rides back in on a donkey, and suddenly now the Romans are pissed off. Like,
Yeah,
it's the
yeah.
equivalent of going into a bank and jumping up on the teller's desk and opening her cash register and just throwing fucking money everywhere. And, who's going to get away with that? You're not going to get away with that today, and he wouldn't have gotten away with that back then. And when you look at that, you have to question, like, is that a historical fact? And that gets us back to revisionist history. There's people who are like, well, there's a reason that it wasn't documented and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, the Roman people were some of the best documentarians of their time at the
But
time.
this,
If
I
something
always go
like
back
that
to this.
happened, yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm just agreeing with you. It's I always go back to that. The Romans kept meticulous records, especially if there was a state criminal or
Yeah,
threat to overthrow the empire. Let's just conveniently leave that guy out. It's no, I'm not buying it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, what government just sits back and allows somebody to fuck with their money? Like, that
Right?
doesn't happen.
No,
That
no.
doesn't. Banks are federally insured for a reason,
Yeah,
because the federal government has a stake in that. They get tax money from them, so you're
yeah.
fucking with the
No.
government's money, and they're not just going to let you do that.
Somebody would have stopped him. Somebody would have stopped him from doing that. And I mean, that's all. That's just obviously an overblown. It's another story. That's exaggerated for effect. My vision was always that the temple was a gathering place anyway, and the inner part of the temple was where you actually maybe went and did a worship or a sacrifice. But that courtyard around it was where it was like a flea market. It wasn't just money changers. That's where people sold shit. And some of the people were money changers, I imagine. That's and then but so if he walked up and interrupted people's business, it's like, come on, somebody would have somebody local, the cops, the Romans, like you said, or just the people involved, like, hey, who are you? One guy with a robe and a stick, get out of here. They'd have just kicked his ass and run him off. But
Yeah, yeah. And what also clued me in on this and brought me more over to the mythicist perspective is looking at that and then saying, well, if Jesus actually existed, let's just postulate that Jesus actually existed. What did Jesus himself supposedly believe? And we have to understand that Jesus was a devout Jew, according to the Bible. He never disavowed Judaism. And so he obviously supposedly believed in the story of Noah and the ark and Adam and Eve and stuff. All of that stuff would have been something that was realistically true in the eyes of Jesus. Now, we come to the point where we say, okay, well, Jesus was the Son of God or God incarnate in human form. And then you say, well, how is it that God himself in human form would not know that this is factually true? And that's like, either God's an idiot who doesn't know what the hell he did, or this dude was just some crazy fucker that said, I'm the son of God. He's the Jim Jones of his time. And he
well,
had everybody going, oh yeah, son of God, sure, why not?
the Bible falls apart real quick when you look at it from that point of view. I mean, God, right in the beginning, in the very first book, he punishes the entire race of people that he created because he created them badly. I mean, what's that all about? He didn't help be the way that he made them, so he destroys them all and blames them for it. It's it was a little too much for me to get my head around as soon as I As soon as they left mom. But
Yeah. We know, and we're talking about revisionist history here, and some of the things that we deal with revisionist history, and you mentioned creationists earlier, and so we'll deal with like what people like Ken Ham and others of his ilk. Um, we deal with the idea the Bible is a factual historical record, and then we see, okay, well, let's look at Noah and the ark. Did that happen historically? Can we show some evidence of that actually happening? Can we show where that could have happened uh, the way that it says it did? Was the earth ever entirely covered by water? And then we look at Germany and well, what's now Germany and Asia, and we say, well, man, there were societies that were just they lived right through this, and nothing fucking happened to them. Like they didn't
yeah,
see shit. They were totally in the dark. So, how could that have happened? If the Earth was covered by water, how the fuck did they happen? Every supposedly everybody was killed, but yet there's societies that existed before and right through and continued after this supposed event. And then we look at the Exodus, and we ask, okay, well, were the Jews ever actually enslaved in Egypt? And archaeologically speaking and historically speaking, we can say no, there's no evidence to support that whatsoever. So it's weird because the Bible is revisionist history in action, and then we have people like Ken Ham and other creationists and stuff that are trying to make a comeback for the belief in that from a fundamentalist standpoint as a historical truth. And it's really difficult to combat that. Like, how do you combat that?
I don't know, and it's such a weird when you start getting your head around what they're actually they're revising a history that's already been revised. Once they're re-revising it, they're the myth tellers who created the stories knew that they were myths when they wrote them. These are ways of getting their point across through metaphor and exaggeration and hero worship and personification of nature and things like that. But uh, they were in fact revising history when they wrote it because they didn't really understand the history of the globe. So you had them revising history, and now we have people like Ken Ham revising it again by trying to claim it's a truthful depiction of actual history when we have science that's told us we know a lot about world history. That's the easy part, like Neil deGrasse Tyson says. That's the easy part. That's the stuff we know. Uh, and then you have states like Texas, allowing allowing revisionist history to encroach on their textbooks and by proxy on all of our textbooks because apparently they all come from Texas for a lot of the country. And now Moses is a historical figure thanks to your revisionist history. But yeah, I don't know. Continuing to put out the better word, educate people, get them young. We need to me, we need to fight back early in school. We need to put after school clubs in every school that's got one of those Christian after school clubs. We need a secular after school club. We need a myth club. We need a philosophy club. We need a science club. We need a satire club. A comedy club. We need things that kids can get interested in that isn't indoctrination, that leads them to question, that leads them to use rational thinking and deductive reasoning to come to conclusions. Otherwise, it's like our buddy Krause said the other day. It's child abuse. I've always felt that it's child abuse to lie to kids and steal their ability to critically think when they're not old enough to stop you from doing it. And we see it every day. Schools.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I actually spoke a bit about Texas before you were able to join me, and that is one of the things here in the states. It's kind of fucked up for people like you and myself, and especially for me. With I have two young boys, um, My youngest is 3 and my oldest is 8. And the moment one of those Texas textbooks shows up in my 8-year-old's class, he's gonna get some fucked up grades coming home from school when he straight up just tells the teacher that's not true. Like, my
Right?
daddy's not an idiot, and he's shown me every fact there is available out there, and like, that's just not true. Moses didn't found this fucking country. Are you kidding me? you
This
know?
is a this is the point we've gotten to, though, where even the education system itself doesn't know how bad it's gotten. The little girl in Texas, you see where the little girl from Texas? It's always Texas. The little girl got an answer wrong on her test because of the question about is this a fact, an opinion, or an assertion? And then you had to there was a list of statements. You know what I'm talking about? Did you hear this story?
Yeah. We actually discussed this when I was interviewed on the Mythicist Milwaukee show. We
That's right.
discussed this a
That's
bit.
right. Yeah, that's right. That was just a few weeks ago. Yeah. The fact is that her and her parents don't even understand what the point of the question is. The fact that her faith wasn't being questioned. It's just relative to the test itself. But they're so dumb now. They don't even understand that it's okay to understand that your faith is faith and to not hold it forth as fact. It's okay to admit that it's faith and it's not fact. That's where the power came from. That's where your self-help mechanism that you put in place for yourself that you got from somebody else called religion and God, because you're too uncreative to think for yourself. You can't come up with a new idea to help yourself. You just got to lean on the old crutch that society handed down to you. That's none of that makes it real, man. It's just your psyche. That's your way of doing it. That's your mechanism that you use to survive. None of that makes it anything but faith to you, and that's personal. And if it works for you, then great. But to call it to say that if a teacher says that's not a fact, that's an assertion. To say that that's questioning your faith or telling or grading you on your faith is just ignorant. But that's the quality thinking that's coming out, And this girl is held up and lauded like some kind of hero for standing her ground. When someone's down and say, "No, you got that question wrong. Go back to your seat.
Yeah.
Worry about your faith on Sunday, man." God's
Yeah.
an assertion. It might be
You know,
an overwhelmingly popular assertion in these parts, but it's still an assertion.
yeah, and it's weird to think about the idea that maybe we should look at this little girl and tell her to sit down and shut the fuck up. You got the question wrong, But like, honestly, like, that's where we're at. I honestly think there comes a point where you have to just look at somebody and say, no, you're wrong. Sit down, shut the fuck up. Like, you're wrong.
Yes, yes.
You
And the
know?
parents, go back home and let the teachers do their job.
Yeah. Well, I tried to point out in one of my last books called Holy Shit, The Insanity of Blind Faith, Volume 1, Christianity. When I deal with this in that book, I point out the fact that the faith that is asked of you according to the Bible is the same sort of faith that Job was supposed to have, which is faith without any proof or evidence to back that up. You're supposed to have faith in God and not know that it's true. And when you present the Bible and you say, "Oh no, I've got the Bible and here's the facts according to the Bible," well, now you don't have faith anymore. Now you have
That's exactly
supposed
right.
truth. You have
That's
truth
exactly
now.
right.
And if you have truth, you can't have faith. They're mutually exclusive ideas. You can't have both at the same time. It's just it's frustrating to try
Thank
and
you.
get around that idea. These are mutually exclusive
Yes.
ideas. They can't coexist. It doesn't work. It's just like free will and omnipotence or omniscience. Like, you can't have both of those.
Right.
They don't work
Right.
together. You know, to me, it's like trying to put a jigsaw puzzle together and you don't have all the pieces and you just try to shove shit together. Like, no, that doesn't work. The puzzle's not going to look right. That's not how it's supposed to go. You got to have all the fucking pieces. You can't shove 6 puzzles together and put it all together and make one picture. It doesn't work that way.
But if you're able to
It's so
see the picture
frustrating.
that you want, regardless of what's actually there, that doesn't matter to you. You know, and that's what you're getting with religious people. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
what you show them. Doesn't matter what you show them. Doesn't matter what kind of logic you talk. You know, they want to believe. They will believe. They're gonna believe. You know, my issue is like just like we were just talking about. My issue is with the people that hold it forth as fact. When we all know that if it was fact, we'd all believe.
Yeah.
You don't have to believe. You know, you don't have to believe in evolution. It's still fact. You know, that's the great thing about it. You know, it's still there for everybody. It's just like gravity. Whether you believe in it or not, you're still not sailing off the planet. So, uh, you know,
Yeah, and whether it works the way that people have offered a theory, an idea about how it works, whether it works that way or not, we know that it works. Like, we know it's a fact. Jump off a building and tell me gravity doesn't exist. Do that. Just start flying. You
right,
know, you're not gonna do it.
right.
It's not gonna fucking happen. It's crazy, and it's crazy that here we are in 2015, and it's one of those weird things because we've come to a sort of weird circle, because there was a point, especially here in the United States, where we were really trying to educate people and push them and offer them, you know, facts. And now there's people, you know, there's a backlash against factual information. Like, how does that fucking happen? We're
That's what I was just
backpedaling.
talking about. That's what I was just talking about. In the 60s and 70s, science was cool, man, and people were like, "Wow, we're learning stuff," and there's you know new comets being discovered and planetoids and asteroid belts and all this cool stuff, and they're discovering new fossils every year in Africa and other places, and putting together the chain of events that led to where we are now and all this crap. And then all of a sudden, and to me, you know, it happened with Reagan. It happened with when Carter left office and Reagan came along, and it was all about, yeah, you know, take no crap, rebuild the military, beat down the Soviet Union, you know, be proud to be an American. All that stuff went hand in hand with let's just get stupid, let's just do what we're told, put on the blue blazer, go to church, just say no to drugs, and toe the party line, trickle down economics, the whole bit. You know, they all bought it, and now here we are with a whole generation of people younger than me who don't get that. You know, the Earth wasn't created in 7 days, 6,000 years ago, or less than 10. Certainly less than 10. That's what I get from creationists. They love throwing that out there because there's no Jewish rabbi in the world that'll tell you that it's 10,000 years old. They have a date. You know, if you go by the Torah, Jewish conservatives have a date. The Earth is some damn, and they have it on their calendar some 5,009 or 6,007. I don't know what it is, but it's not 10,000. You know why the creationists have accepted that it might be about 10,000 and not 6,000? You know why that is, right? Because there's fucking Chinese people that are older than 10,000 years old. I mean, they have
Yeah,
paper and you know there's stuff that we have that is that old. There's cultures that can prove that they were in existence before 6, 7,000 years ago. Like, so they have to like bend. That always cracked me up. They have to bend on that one. Well,
yeah. It's a hilarious thing to me. I made a meme for my page. God doesn't matter. That utilized the. No, it wasn't too long ago they discovered a dildo from ancient Germany that is actually like 20 or 30,000 years old. And it's like, this
nice.
dildo is older than you think the world is. Like, really, your assertion has been disproven by a dildo.
Right, right.
Like, how fucked up is that for you? Honestly, you're asserting that the world is actually younger than this dildo was. Like
Right?
that's just a hilarious thing for me. There's dildos older than the world you believe in. That's just crazy.
Fossilized fake penis is older than your worldview. Wow. What are you gonna do? It's sad to get a little older and realize you're not gonna probably see the end of it, but it's kind of obvious to me, with talking to the people that we do on the podcast. That religion is dying slowly around the world. It's kind of a happy silver lining to the crappy times we live in America with the fundies.
Yeah. Well, and it's like I always like to point out to people, when you back a dog into the corner, that's when the dog's going to fight its hardest. When it knows its life is, yeah, that's when the dog's going to bite you. When you back him
Yeah,
into the corner and
you're
say,
right.
"No, you're not getting out," and that's when he's really going to fight. And that's what we're seeing from fundamentalists right now. We're seeing that sort of fight against being backed into a corner, and like they don't know where to go, and they're fighting for their
Yeah.
lives.
Yep. You're right. You're right. Oh
It's a
well,
weird
sad for
position
them.
for them, and it's definitely a weird position for us because you hate to be the bad guy who's backing them into the corner, but at the same time you have to understand that yeah that's where you're at. You're backed into that corner, and all I'm
Right.
doing is trying to show you why you're backed into that corner. Like, you got yourself there. I didn't paint you into that corner. You did that. All I'm doing is telling you you're not going to step on the wet paint. You're not.
Right.
You're
Right.
gonna stay where the fuck you're at, or go away. Those are your options.
How do you do this podcast? Are we live right away? Or
Yeah,
you
yeah.
just record this?
No. We've been live since we started, brother. This is just on the
No, that's
spot,
cool.
and we
I
go
thought
ahead.
so. That's cool. That's cool. Then you
But
you
yeah, but
archive them then.
actually, yeah. This will be available later. We've actually got about 3 minutes until the hour's up. And I don't want to push folks too much further past that. You guys do a
Hey
great
man, I'm glad
show.
I got in.
Yeah. You guys do a great job of keeping your show fairly short and relevant, and this is meant for people who actually want to see it, and
Right.
hopefully it offers a slightly different perspective. Just the honest everyman's viewpoint of what's going on out there. And what we're up against, what we're dealing with every day. So,
Hey man,
um,
any chance to plug our crap? We're all about it. So we got a lot of good stuff coming up this year,
oh yeah,
next year.
we've got a few minutes. So let's talk about that. What's Mythicist got coming up in the next year or so?
Well, first of all, the debate series, Buzz Belief, is going to happen on a regular basis with smaller names debating religious topics in a pub atmosphere. But of course, we're headlining with the huge one, Bart Ehrman and Robert Price in October. And everyone's looking forward to that. And as a prelude to that, an equally fascinating debate will be Richard Carrier and Justin Bass. He's an evangelist, so they'll really be a Christian, not just a kind of a Bart Ehrman apologist style atheist on there, but a real honest to God evangelist debating Richard Carrier on the resurrection. So there's that. There's the movie Batman and Jesus. There's Reason Rally. We got a deal done to bring Killer Priest to the Reason Rally, and we're all going out there in force for that.
Yes, yes. I love
This is,
seeing Killa at the last conference. It was just it was an incredible time to hear him speak, and that
yeah,
moment where someone in the crowd asked him, though, can we consider you openly secular? And he said, yeah, you can
yeah,
consider me openly secular. It's like,
yeah,
yes, way to go, Killa.
yes,
You
yeah.
ah
So exciting to have him on board for that. That'll be different to have someone from his background repping
yes,
at the Reason Rally. Really important for the movement. So we're psyched to be a part of it.
Well, if you guys can ever Russell Ken Ham or Ray Comfort into a debate, I would love to debate either one of those men. I don't want to debate them on evolution. I want them to debate me on theology. Like let's discuss your religion, because I want to
Right.
show that
Right.
you are not educated enough in your religion to stand by your viewpoint.
Yeah, well, I don't think any of them would accept a debate from someone like any of us. But you could possibly debate. You could be involved quite literally in one of those other debates. We're going to need people,
Oh
to
yeah,
be
well I
involved in the little debates in the pubs, man. And we don't have a lot of us who have debate experience. I mean, I love to argue, but I don't. That's different than the actual debate.
Well, yeah, I will never claim to be a historian or a theologian, but I am well versed in especially Christian theology, and I may not have the degrees to back it up, but I will certainly take someone to task. So I'm
Hey,
always
we're
available.
atheists, man. We've all read the Bible. We're atheists.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I went one further and I rewrote it.
Yeah, that's it. Bible in a nutshell. I'm about halfway through it. It's good stuff, man. Make sure everybody reads that book.
Oh, definitely, definitely. I try not to plug my shit too much, but I've got 7 books out there. So if you're an atheist
Yeah.
watching the show and you wanna delve into some of these ideas a little bit, the engineer's argument is a philosophical argument against intelligent design. It sort of combats the cosmological argument. If you're not very well versed in the Bible, I would recommend the Bible in a nutshell, the director's cut. That's going to give you pretty much all you need to know about the Bible, and not from a standpoint of someone who just accepts the historical perspective, but more so from someone who wants to present the story as it's supposedly told from a sort of drunk history perspective, if you will. I try to make it fun and enjoyable for everybody. So, let's go ahead and wrap
I'll
it
drink
up.
to that.
We're we're pushing over the hour, so I didn't want to cut you off too short since you got here late, and that's kind of unfortunate. Hopefully, I'll get my
Yeah.
shit together and we can get everything going a little faster next time. But I love having you guys on the show. I love talking to you guys from Mythicist Milwaukee, and especially you and Sean. You guys were such great and gracious hosts when I was up there in Milwaukee last time. So I love your city. I love what you guys are
Hey,
doing
man.
up there, and I definitely want to support you and promote you any way I can. All right,
Hey,
so
same at you, brother. And give our best to Allie too.
yeah, Miss Allie's trying to get better, and I'm afraid she may have to have a little bit of surgery here soon. Hopefully, nothing
Yeah.
too serious. So, well,
No, we're thinking about it.
our thoughts are certainly with her. Our support is definitely with her. We're not praying for her. We don't do the praying thing, but we're definitely hoping that her doctors and surgeons are well trained and well versed in what they do and good at their jobs. So that's as atheists, that's the best we can really hope for. That people are well educated and well trained. Um,
Hey, man. In the meantime, anything we can do to help out with anything, you let us know.
Definitely, definitely. So, to wrap it up, as usual, the thoughts and ideas expressed here in the Devil's and God's Country are not necessarily the thoughts and ideas of the entire Atheist Republic team. We are a large team of over 300 people, very big team, have very diverse ideas. So, if you have a problem with something I've said or something Allie said in the past, or Rob here, or Sean, or any of the other guests I have on here, please direct them at us. These are not should not be directed at Atheist Republic. They just sponsor what we do because I'm very involved in the organization, and they're courteous enough to let me use their platform. So love the Atheist Republic. If you'd like to support the Atheist Republic in any way, you can volunteer with your time, with your money. We accept both. Just visit atheistrepublic.com. Link is in the bottom under the video. So check it out if you want to do something with us or support us in some way. We'd love to have your support. This has been the Devils in God's Country. I think this was episode 8. Killing it. We'll be back here next Monday, same time, same channel. If you'd like to join in and watch, check us out. Check out our Facebook page, Devils in God's Country, and check out our YouTube videos. We've got everything's available on YouTube, so if you want to watch the past videos, check them out. Thanks for your time and attention. I think we had one consistent viewer here all night. It may be one of my friends because my friends love me very much, and I love them too. We're gonna go ahead and cut out. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Take it easy.